Previously on podcast Without Pretense.
I just killed him.
Mechanical keyboards are the bane of my existence and my ears.
I mean, they're not. They said they wouldn't pull the sponsorship, but we should just put a better spin on everything.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Strickland.
I'm Ayaz Akhtar.
And I'm Eric Sandine.
And together, the three of us make a great Halloween horse costume.
3?
Yes. I'm the dick.
Are you sure?
So,
off to a great start.
Were you just waiting to use that one all day?
I don't. It should be incredibly obvious that I have absolutely nothing prepared when these moments come around.
That's terrific. I'm really glad. Yeah. And so
that was just. What was that, Ayaz?
I was going to ask, what's everybody drinking tonight? I've got a glass of water. Very exciting.
Actually, that's a mason jar of water. It looks like.
It's a glass jar of water.
Okay. Yeah. Eric, what are you drinking?
Lagunitas IPA. Camera. Yeah.
I don't have my drink down here with me, but earlier I actually posted this on. I think I posted it on Facebook. Actually, I said that I was partying down in that I made a pitcher of cranberry juice from frozen concentrate and then just started drinking straight from the pitcher because I'm home by myself and my wife is in Europe with her mom visiting castles and sending me pictures of amazing looking castles over and over again. So I said, screw the glasses. I'm just going to drink straight from the pitcher.
You should send her pictures of Matt Castle from the Cowboys. He's an NFL player, in case you don't know what I'm talking about. Just send her
pictures of me with Nathan Fillion.
That would work too.
Yeah.
Any other castles you can think of? And the Punisher. There you go.
Frank Castle. Yeah, that's true.
That's actually sounds pretty good. Somebody's going to have to do this. It's just pictures of Jonathan photoshopped in.
With things that are called castle, like White Castle and stuff like that.
By a chessboard where the rook has been changed, moved over.
Or, yeah, exactly. Where someone has just castled in chess. Yeah.
You're just like, I think that'll work.
What they should do is I should just do a standard like this kind of pose, and use the exact same image every time.
Yeah, well, you do. Will Wheaton does that all the time. He'll tweet a photo of him in front of a green screen, and then just chaos breaks loose.
Yeah. Or that Shia LaBeouf thing where he did the whole ranting on a green screen, which was genius.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if it was genius or not, but it definitely was interesting.
I think it was whether intentionally or not, it was genius. I don't know if it was intentional.
There was genius somewhere along the line.
Yeah, genius happened. So I got a question for you guys. I mean, we're not going to talk about the movie Reconstruction of William Zero because not all of us have had a chance to see it yet. I watched it, and I have thoughts on it. But I'm not going to spoil anything, so I'll wait for the other guys to finish. But on the topic of movies, and since it is Halloween coming up, I thought maybe we could have a little discussion about scary movies if you guys like, and see if there are any particular favorites among the three of us, whether they're things that you find genuinely unsettling or stuff that's just entertaining to watch around Halloween. The reason I bring this up is before I came down here, I was upstairs watching my Comcast cable. Fuck you, Comcast. And
full disclosure, Comcast is not yet our sponsor, but we will continue using their we think their tagline, which is "Fuck you, consumer," or Comcast.
This episode's hashtag is #Fuck you Comcast. Please sponsor us.
Right. Yes. There are two crusades that we are currently pursuing. One is to be sponsored by Comcast while we continuously tell them to fuck off. And the other is to be named one of the best podcasts of 2014. So
still gonna do it.
So I was watching essentially the second half of Paranormal Activity, the first one, It was on cable, and I was just like, all right, I'll have this. I've seen it before, but I would have that on in the background. And I thought, I actually kind of liked the first one. I think the first one is decently creepy, especially since they don't over explain the creature or ghost or whatever it is in the first movie at all. So you don't really find out any of the backstory in the first film. That led me down a rabbit hole because I've seen all the other Paranormal Activity movies up to the latest one that's out in theaters that has like a 13%.
Like 6 out now or something? Yeah,
Part 6, and it's got a 13% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And so I've seen all of them at least once because they would come on like Netflix. So I'm like, oh, well, screw it, I'll watch it. Part 2 is okay. Actually, I kind of like Part 2 a lot too. Part 3 is the one where it goes back to the childhood of the two sisters who are central figures in Part 1 and Part 2. Part 4 is the stupid webcam one that just wasn't really effective and didn't really move the story forward very much. Part 5 was the spin-off, so some people don't even count it because it wasn't laid in as one of the 6. So then I decided, well, I want to look into Part 6 and just see what the hell happens because it's going to be a while before I get a chance to see it. And I had heard it was going to be the very last episode or very last entry into the movie series. The problem is, after Part 1, they start trying to build in a backstory of why this entity is targeting these particular families. And it never explains it enough to make any sense. And so I was hoping that Part 6 would somehow tie it all together, but it sounds like it just screws all that up even more. And at that point, I thought, why bother? I mean, obviously to make money, that's why you bother, but why bother even trying to have a backstory at that point? Does it make sense?
I saw the first, I want to say 3, and I couldn't care that, oh, well, these people are, I guess, or this woman and this family is somewhat special, so they're going to be tortured for the rest of eternity. It's kind of like, okay, but the idea of the found footage genre, that this kind of this realistic style of horror, there's just so much waiting and waiting and waiting, and the payoffs are so minimal, at least in the first one. I think there's the original ending, which was way more violent, and they took that out.
And the original ending would have negated the sequels.
Yes, and I'm happy with that, quite honestly, because the original ending, spoiler, if you're watching this show and you're worried about Paranormal Activity,
I guess now you'll know what the ending is not.
Yes,
that's how we spoil this.
It's the woman who's possessed or whatever. She shows up right to camera after she kills her husband. She slits her own throat and just drops. It's like, that's a hell of an ending. I mean, that really ends all this.
I thought in the original she kills her husband, then ends up kneeling and rocking back and forth in front of the camera, and then the cops come, and then she picks up the knife and turns around toward the cops and shoot her dead.
Okay, then I'm mixing it up. If that didn't happen, then I've made up an ending that for years I've thought is the ending. So
either way, the character dies in the original ending, and she appears in parts like 2, 3, 4, and 5, not in part 6 apparently. Which is weird. I liked part 1 because I kind of liked that slow moving, creepy atmosphere where it trains you to really look hard at the screen to see if there's something detectable happening, and that gets you more and more invested. So when something does happen, it's super creepy. But even when nothing is happening, you're kind of convincing yourself you're seeing stuff because you're looking so hard for it. And I like that. But then again, I also like older horror films from the late 70s and early 80s that had a much slower pace to them because that's kind of what I grew up with.
I think in that vein, so like the 2 that I thought of immediately when you brought that up were not older ones, but I really liked Oculus, which was a more recent one. I think it was called Oculus, right?
Yeah. I haven't seen that one yet, but I've seen it pop up on my suggestion list.
It's not bad. It's worth a watch. And the other one I actually liked was Sinister, the one with Ethan Hawke in it. I thought that one was actually pretty good.
Why did you like Sinister? I saw that in the theaters, and I was just
Why did I
like, yeah, what was good about it? Because I did rewatch it, and I kind of see what people liked about it, but it seemed very formulaic.
It was.
Maybe
It totally was. Like towards the end, I guess. Like it was formulaic, but I liked that it was kind of paced slowly as you go through it, right? So, I mean, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it. I think I was also just in the mood to watch it at that point. Like I was in a horror movie mood when I was watching it. So I was already like priming myself to watch it. And I don't like horror movies necessarily that much. Like they're okay, but I'd never pick them. And so once I actually started paying attention to that one, I think it kind of surprised me because it wasn't like, it wasn't like what I'd been watching previously. It was less The Hills Have Eyes, more 70s, 80s style horror movie. I think that's why I liked it.
In the movie, Ethan Hawke plays a writer, and he's a family man, and he wants to write a new book. So he wants to move into this neighborhood where some kind of horrible murders were. And then, of course, he buys the house where all the murders have been. And he's trying to hide this from his wife, which is just like, how long would it take her to figure this out? And she does find out at some point. But it's just like, that's the premise, at least the beginning of the movie. It's not the premise at all. That's the beginning of the movie.
How are you liking our new death house? Dream house. Dream house.
And then it just moves on, and we get some creepy, like, was that a child who walked by? Oh, there wasn't a child that walked by. Oh, I'm going to constantly drink bourbon.
Children are inherently creepy. I mean, that Japanese horror would not exist if it weren't for the fact that children are inherently creepy.
I mean, there's no Children of the Corn 7 like we've watched on this show. But
no,
that's true.
I would not recommend Children of the Corn 7 if you want to watch a scary movie. Nor would I recommend Fro City of Angels or whatever it was we were watching. No, it wasn't City of Angels. It was the fourth one, right?
Not Salvation. It's the one with Ed Furlong. That one.
Yeah. Not good.
That's the way I remember it.
Oh, and
Angel.
Angel is in it. David Boreanaz.
That's right.
He's not bad in it.
No, he was awful in it. What are you talking about? He was terrible. Everyone was terrible in that movie.
Has he been great in anything?
Wait, there was another actor that I actually respected who was in that movie too, and I can't remember, an older actor who was in it, and I can't remember who it was now.
Danny Trejo. He's in everything.
Well, that's not who I'm thinking. Yes, the great Danny Trejo, who I cannot wait to see his King Lear.
It's gonna happen. It'll just be like King Lear Kicks Ass or whatever his ass series is called.
Well, for other creepy movies that I actually like, I mean, I probably wouldn't recommend Paranormal Activity to somebody because I think I enjoyed it because I had pretty low expectations for it when I saw it. It's not one that I would immediately recommend. I would recommend a movie called The Changeling from 1980. George C. Scott is in it, and it's a ghost movie. Very effective, very atmospheric. You do have to get past the fact that it was made in the late 70s, early 80s, so the fashions and hairstyles are laughable because they're all, like those old 1970s style suits and bell-bottom pants and that kind of stuff. But the actual ghost story is pretty effective until it gets to about the third act. The third act gets a little loopy, but the setup is incredibly creepy. So I highly recommend that one. I think The Others is really good. I think that's a pretty creepy movie. It's especially if you haven't seen it before. It's really effective.
Is it a period piece?
Yeah, it's I want to say World War I era.
Oh yeah, we just watched that like last weekend.
It might actually be World War II, but yeah. So I think
it's World War I.
Okay.
I liked it the first time I saw it. The second time I saw it, it was just not worth watching.
That's the problem, is that it's a great movie to see once, but it's also one of those movies that once you get to the ending, it removes the need for you to ever watch it again.
Yep. Like somewhere about 15 minutes in, I looked at Liz, who had seen it before, and I was just like, "Oh, Yeah, I remember. I'm not going to say anything, but
Yeah.
but I'm just
It's
not,
been
I
on
don't
my,
need to watch this anymore.
It's been on my list for a while, and every time I look at it, I want to say its ratings are a little iffy. That's one of the reasons why I haven't bothered. And this is the guy who watches really shitty movies all the time, you know.
It's an
But
84 on Rotten Tomatoes, 74
well, then I
on
don't know
Metacritic.
what's going on there.
Yeah.
The other day being yesterday, I watched The Thing for the first time, the 1982 version of it. And have you guys seen
John Carpenter movie?
Yeah.
Yes, the Carpenter one. You guys have seen this one, I assume.
Yeah.
Many times.
I was just blown away by the practical effects. It was so disgusting. Just unbelievably.
John Carpenter could make a really fucking awesome movie. I mean, he's made some incredibly entertaining movies. I wouldn't call them, like a masterpiece or anything, but really entertaining.
Yeah, I was reading about it.
We're actually Halloween Friday, I think. So one of the theaters in SF is Saturday. Yeah. Is doing a John Carpenter like double feature, and I think that's actually, I don't know what movies it is, but I agreed to go. So
it'll be like
awesome.
John Carpenter's one-man show. Oh, I was gonna say I was reading some history about The Thing and seeing the original reviews, and the original reviews are like Roger Ebert didn't like it. He just thought it was kind of disgusting, and there's a bunch of pretty well-respected critics who just didn't like it. But over the years, it's gained more and more critical acclaim. I think on Rotten Tomatoes, it's like 84%, because upon like rewatching and I guess putting it in a different context, it's actually really fun. It to me, it seemed like a big Twilight Zone episode, and then I found out it was based on a short story, and it totally makes a lot of sense. And I was just there's some, like, I was trying to figure out the rules of what the thing could do, and it seemed a little vague when it came to that, but I definitely enjoyed just the practical effects, and I feel like this is a movie that is going to get remade at some point, because it has to, and the CG effects just won't look as disgusting as some of the practical stuff that was in this. Just if you like seeing practical gore, and I'm not talking about in a Saw kind of way or in a Eli Roth kind of thing. I'm talking about just disturbing stuff. Not like, oh, well, you don't care about the character, he's getting killed. It's like, no, this is actually a very tense movie. It's pretty good. It's a well-told story. So I'd go with The Thing for scariness, because it could
great
be
too,
anything.
Because it also really sets up that whole paranoia among the guys who are there, right? Like, they're all paranoid about who could be compromised, and that's a great sequence where they're all sitting around and waiting to find out who among them has been who is not who he says he is. And that's a great moment. I mean, it's just a really iconic moment in horror movie cinema. The first Halloween movie still holds up. It's a great movie.
Yeah, we tried to watch it over the weekend. It's not available anywhere. You can't even buy it on Amazon streaming.
Weird. Yeah, it's actually on television right now, or at least it was probably wrapping up when I came down here.
I think the only place to get it was iTunes. But yeah,
great movie though, fantastic, and sticking with John Carpenter. So highly recommended. One that I didn't like as much, that a lot of people consider a real classic, like one of the movies that kind of brought the slasher genre into being, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And for me, that movie just has never worked. And I don't know if there's something wrong with me, because everyone who's a horror movie aficionado swears by that film. But I don't like the characters at all. And I find it clumsy in its execution, no pun intended. And it's one of those where it escapes me. The fame and acclaim escape me on that. I will say that, I mean, Leatherface is genuinely terrifying in it, but it's a weird film. And there's a particular character who is irritating as shit, and he sticks around way too freaking long. It's the one that you immediately want to die first, and of course he hangs around way too long toward the end.
I don't think I've seen the original. I've only seen I saw Texas Chainsaw. That was that 3D one that came out fairly recently. And I remember the gore level on that and the practical effects on that were excellent. The story shit and the ending is shit, but the execution, no pun intended again, it's really well done. It's got some really good gore. If you want to go, how did they do that? It's a pretty good movie for that kind of thing. But otherwise, not really worth it.
So what horror movies have you seen that you would either not recommend, apart from the billions that we watched on this show? But are there any horror movies you've seen where you had high hopes and it just didn't live up to them at all, and you're like, well, that was a total waste of time?
Disturbing Behavior. No, actually, that wasn't too bad. It was a teen. It was one of those teen slasher flicks. Actually, it wasn't a slasher flick. It was a horror movie where another Twilight Zone kind of thing, where these kids go into a town and they kind of get reprogrammed to be excellent citizens, and then they start revolting because their hormones are going out of control, and they start like bashing each other's heads open and stuff like that. Or because that's kind of horror. Halloween H2O, that wasn't really worth it.
Oh yeah.
No, any Halloween after 3 is just avoid. Halloween 3, by the way, I recommend because it's so batshit crazy, because it has nothing to do with Halloween 1 or 2. That's
is that the one with the exploding masks
the
or something?
Yeah, that was the Halloween that had no connection to Michael Myers really, and so I recommend it simply because you need to watch the first 2 Halloweens. Really, you just need to watch the first one. The second one is not really that important. It's got some moments in it, but the first one's really good, and the second one's okay. But the third one is great simply because it's such a huge departure from the first 2. And then after that, don't bother.
I looked into or found out the history about that too, because the movie studio wanted to have like just a Halloween movie that would come out every year. Like, okay, this is an idea. What if we just do a totally different story and call it Halloween? Like the Twilight Zone, because the Twilight Zone, every episode had different things happening, right? So they went with this, but everyone was expecting, that slasher killer guy, because they built up a pretty good killer. So they didn't have that.
And they had 2 movies, right? If by the second film they had started that, then people would have probably caught on to it faster. But the fact that you do 2 movies with that character means that you've already established expectations. So doing Halloween 1 and 2 about the same serial killer monster shape, and then doing Halloween 3 where you do a departure from that is confusing. But I like the idea. It's similar to what I've said, the Scary Movie franchise and all the other parrot spoof movie things that we've seen over and over again. I think they've kind of slacked off recently, which is good. But we would get like the Date movie and Epic movie, all those crappy spoof films that weren't really spoofs. They were just shitty films. I kept on joking that they should just create a generic movie called Terrible Spoof Parody Movie 2014. And the next one will be Terrible Spoof Parody Movie 2015. And they just change the year each time, but keep the same title because it's all the same style humor and same style of non-joke jokes. So it would be very similar to this Halloween franchise you're talking about.
At some point, they'll just call it the movie because it's just that's it. It just
they're so bad. I would say anything past Halloween 3 is not worth watching. I argue that the Friday the 13th series, with only a couple of exceptions, are not really worth watching. The kills can be entertaining, but it'd be better for you to just find a video clip that just has a compilation of all the kills.
Points to not saying supercut. Yeah, I did not say supercut, but you could say supercut. That would be what it is. But I do make an exception. Jason 10, Jason in Space, is worth watching. Wait. First, Eric, have you seen this movie?
I totally agree with that.
You've seen it. Okay, I've seen it too. This is great. Now we gotta talk about Jason X, Jason in Space. Because
it's worth watching, not because it's at all scary, because it really isn't. No. It's hilarious. Nope.
My favorite thing about this movie is the fact that somebody made it. It's like, okay, here's the deal.
Yeah.
Jason Voorhees, the unstoppable killer of Crystal Lake, he is so evil that they fire him into space, I believe.
Yes.
And he's like an icicle floating around in space. And so whatever year this is, I can't remember what year the movie takes place. Sorry, guys. So some spaceship finds this icicle of a person. So they take it in because they're thinking, oh, well, maybe we can save the person, which makes no sense. So they bring in the Iceman, Encino Man here, and it turns out he's Jason Voorhees. So he thaws out and then proceeds to kill everybody on the ship. And it's incredibly dumb. You can see like some of the props are like, spray painted Nerf guns. There's one amazing death that they tested on Mythbusters where somebody's head is dipped into liquid nitrogen and then smashed onto a table and it shatters into a million pieces. It's a great visual. It's a great kill. Whoever wrote that one. It doesn't work according to the Mythbusters because they tried it with a pig's head, but it's a pretty cool movie. Otherwise, it still revolves around the idea of this cast of characters. They actually realize it is Jason Voorhees, and they don't just immediately eject him out. They just decide to keep him. So,
yeah, there's like a long section of that film where they're essentially trying to go about their daily stuff while Jason is systematically killing off the crew. It's phenomenal. It's like. I wish that Jason Takes Manhattan was as funny, but it has really long segments of it just being boring. And for most of the movie takes place on a boat, and the bit that takes place in quote unquote Manhattan took place in like Toronto or Vancouver or something. Not nearly as fun. Actually the Friday the 13th reboot was not too bad when they did, a few years ago, they did a remake where they did a new version of essentially starting at Friday the 13th Part 2 because the villain wasn't Mrs. Voorhees, it was Jason. And if you know your Friday the 13th lore, you know that the bad guy in the first film is Mrs. Voorhees. And she's avenging the death of Jason. And then somehow Jason becomes the villain in subsequent films. But in the reboot, they just start with Jason Voorhees being the villain, but it's okay for a slasher movie. I mean, I
remember it.
That's a big qualifier, but
I remember seeing it. I remember not thinking it was horrible, but that's about all I got.
Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin in the Woods. That is an awesome movie. I went into that movie not knowing anything about it other than that kick-ass movie poster. And I think Joss Whedon did it. And I was like,
that's the best way to see it.
And I started watching this thing and I'm like, oh, they're doing the standard horror tropes. That seems pretty interesting. And like, okay, we've done that, been there, done that. And then the way it twists, don't want to give away, never want. This is a movie I will not spoil. I don't want to even talk about it. Just if you haven't seen it, you should see it. Unless you guys want to say stuff.
Well, the only thing I will say is that I read.
Sorry, I just remembered what this movie was.
I figured that was what the loud mechanical clacking was that Eric looking this movie up to see, have I seen this movie? The thing I read about it recently said that Warner Brothers was interested in perhaps having them make a sequel. And I'm, again, not spoiling the movie, but I cannot think of a way that you could make a sequel to Cabin in the Woods based upon the ending of the film. So
they would have to retcon the ending out to do that, or maybe it's a prequel. I mean, maybe that's the only way you could do another one of those things, but wouldn't put it past people.
Or they go even more meta, but can't really say anything about that without giving away stuff of the movie. So, but they could, if they went more meta, where you went one step further back, and maybe so. But that again, talking cryptically for the weird Venn diagram of people who listen to our podcast but have not yet seen Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah,
which might be two people.
My favorite horror parody, just kind of based on that one, is not favorite, but recent one was Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Have you guys seen that?
That's a good one too. Yeah,
that is amazing. That's a horror comedy. Tyler Labine is the guy's name, or Labine, and then there's who's the redheaded guy?
Alan
Tudyk.
Tudyk. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's in lots of different things, and
he was Wash in Firefly.
Yep.
And he was in A Knight's Tale, I think, or mix. No, I always mix him up with that other guy.
No, he was in
Knight's Tale.
Okay, okay. Well, it was Dale and Tucker fight evil or versus evil, whatever it was called.
Tucker and
I saw it on
Netflix. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Didn't know what to expect. Yeah,
it's great, and they've also joked about, or at least talked about, the interest of them doing a sequel, and they did that at a horror convention a couple of years ago. They talked about the possibility of a sequel, and the crowd just went total apeshit because everyone wanted to see more. But it does make, again, like, how do you do a sequel to that unless you put them in a different horror movie genre type of thing? So instead of the slasher genre, which is what it spoofs, maybe that something like a ghost genre.
That would be an interesting way to do it. I'd like to see those characters in a different genre. Sure, I'd see it.
I would too. It was really entertaining.
I think the reason why I wound up on Netflix, it had a really hard time. Why do I know all this needless trivia? It had a really hard time finding a distribution channel, and for some reason they couldn't get the DVDs out, but they could get it on Netflix, and people found it there, and it was doing really well. So good for them, because that movie, when you look at the poster, the movie art, it looks like, oh, this is going to be a dumb movie, and then you start the movie, and it seems like, okay, it's going to be a standard slasher, and then it just says no, right? Like within the 5 minutes of the movie, they're like, no, this is a totally different kind of movie. Let's go with it. And it's just so fun. And I thought
the kills in that movie are redonkulous.
They're hilarious. Yeah. They are just, and it's a horror comedy, so I'm not just finding sick joy in this. They are actually, you will laugh at some of the deaths in this. Because there's just so, like, how did you manage to do this? Or the actual reasonableness of the characters in certain aspects. It's like, actually, that is what a person would say, and that's what a person would do. But in this genre, it looks crazy that you act reasonably. So very, very fun. And the cops are coming, apparently. I don't know if you can hear that.
Oh, no, we can hear it.
Well, that's pretty good, because this is like usually don't hear the dogs, let alone sirens outside.
No, we've been hearing the sirens for about 20 seconds. Yeah.
Well, they're going.
Yeah. Usually you hear it on my side because I live so close to a major road and right across from both a subway and a train track or train tracks. So, that's Tucker and Dale are great. You got to check that one out. I was trying to think if there was another one. Oh, it was just making me think about movies that really found their audience once they got out of the cinema. Like, there are some movies that didn't do well at all when they were in general release in movie theaters, but became like real cult classics later on. And I'm thinking about stuff like Big Trouble in Little China is a great example, or Office Space is a great example of movies that didn't do so well when they were out in theaters, but then just people went crazy for them when they hit the home theater market. And I think Tucker and Dale, and probably Cabin in the Woods too, are both in that category. So a lot of horror movies in that realm too, of movies that didn't do so well in the box office but did great at home theater.
The person who goes by the word or by the name in the chat room mentioned Silence of the Lambs ended up being a surprise horror / thriller. It's like, I wouldn't think of it as a horror, but it does freak you the fuck out. I will tell you that. I watched
Buffalo Bill is a pretty horrific character.
I watched this movie. I had this period of insomnia throughout high school, and I watched a lot of late night movies at around 2 or 3 in the morning on the local Channel 7, ABC. They'd run like some really terrible movies. But for some reason, one night they actually put on Silence of the Lambs. And it wasn't really that edited, as I would find out much later. And I was like, what the fuck am I watching? Because this is not like the stupid 70s rock and roll high school movies I've seen, which is not Rock and Roll High School. It's a different movie. I think it's called Cotton Candy. Just just shit would normally be in this spot. But Silence of the Lambs scared the hell out of me. So that was fun. I don't know if it helped my insomnia. But
Seven is also a movie I would put along the same lines, like that kind of crime thriller / horror movie. There's certainly some scenes in Seven that are really disturbing. Like gluttony in particular is pretty tough, and some of the other crime scenes are pretty disgusting. It does, of course, have the unfortunate burden of the ending being almost goofy because of the performances. So now you constantly have the "what's in the box" kind of.
Well, one of my favorite things about that one was the I think it was that movie where Kevin Spacey didn't want to be on the poster. He didn't want his name on the poster because then people would just expect it. Like him throughout the movie to be something very important.
Yeah, I was watching some kind of thriller, and there was a guy who was calling up people, and he was giving them like horrible things to do or whatever, or he was harassing somebody. I can't remember the exact plot because you can see how memorable this movie is. But the voice is clearly Kiefer Sutherland. Okay, like Kiefer Sutherland's voice. You can't not know it. You know Donald Sutherland, you probably know Kiefer Sutherland. There's a good chance of it. So in the movie, as you're going along, the cops are hot on the tail of the stalker guy on the phone, and then they finally get him.
I'm pretty sure this is Phone Booth.
Is it Phone Booth?
Yeah, I think it might be.
Did they actually have Kiefer Sutherland as the bad guy in that one?
I think so. I've never seen the movie, but I seem to recall that was the case.
Maybe it was Phone Booth. That makes more sense, too, because that's a person calling, harassing somebody. Anyway, so they do arrest somebody, and it's clearly not Kiefer Sutherland. And then you eventually see like Kiefer Sutherland walk by with glasses on, and you're like, oh, he tricked them. I was just like, I'm hoping like maybe they're just fucking with us. They're like, oh, okay, well, his voice could belong to anybody.
Kiefer Sutherland is actually Kaiser Soze.
And then he fixes his walk and walks away.
By, and then like it just becomes like a reveal after a reveal of like all these characters who manage to pull wool over each other's eyes, and eventually like we don't even know what's happening anymore.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is they should have hired a very recognizable voice, or at least put a voice changer on Kiefer Sutherland, and don't put him in the fucking title sequences. Learn from Kevin Spacey and Seven. Although I heard he also didn't want to do media appearances. That's why he didn't want his name on the fucking movie.
I would.
That sounds fine to me. Hey, why not?
Suncast is saying it's correct. That was Phone Booth. Thank you for that.
Oh, look at that! Look at that! Hey, that was just memory there, folks. Because
I ain't got none.
It's not reliable these days. But another movie I would argue is pretty good for Halloween is the original Poltergeist. Poltergeist 2 also
never seen
fun.
That. Never seen that.
Poltergeist is
good. Yeah.
Yeah, the first Poltergeist is good. The second Poltergeist is okay. The third one's not good and not worth watching. Although the guy who plays the super creepy preacher character who's introduced in part 2 is really unsettling in both of those movies. He's probably more so for me because I grew up in a Southern Baptist region, and there were actual preachers who remind me of that guy, that character. So for me, there was like a personal connection that was super creepy. But the first two movies in the Poltergeist series are pretty good. The first one's really good. The second one's pretty good. And I understand that the remake is worthless, just terrible.
I watched the new Carrie recently. Well, new 2013. Horrible. It was not very good. I mean, the first one wasn't exactly amazing, but the new one was not very good.
Another scary movie we have to mention because we watched it for this show, and the reason we have to mention is because there's a local connection now. Is Thankskilling?
Oh yeah,
the slasher flick that stars a murderous turkey. Because there's a local theater here in Atlanta, my favorite theater, Dad's Garage Theater Company, that's doing Thankskilling the musical. It's not just a stage adaptation of Thankskilling, it's a musical adaptation of Thankskilling.
Do you know if the turkey will be played by a person in a suit or a puppet?
I do not know. I suspect.
I hope
I
it's a
suspect
puppet.
a puppet. I suspect a puppet because a lot of the actors who work with Dad's Garage have also done puppeteering work. In fact, they used to hold a late night event called Puppet Slam, where they would do very short, weird, surreal, dark, sometimes really funny segments with puppetry. And it would be like a midnight show that you would go see for like $5. And you could see some really incredible stuff, and then some stuff that was interesting but not quite there yet, and then some stuff where you're like, I would need to be really stoned or drunk or something to find this entertaining. But they've got people who've done lots of puppetry work, so I suspect it will be a puppet. I hope to see it. I might go see the dress rehearsal tomorrow night, but I hope to see it at least this weekend when it's opening weekend.
If they're ever going to do a live stream, let me know. I want to see this because I'm also very interested in how the hell that turkey can do some of the things that defy physics in the movie. Because a lot of the stuff, he's picking up items or he's ripping off faces and doing whatever. And in the movie, they sort of cleverly hide it because they'll just you'll see a wing and then you'll see a glass being held or whatever, ridiculous. There's no way in hell he can do this. So I'm very curious how they're going to do that adaptation on stage.
I imagine they'll have the puppeteers dressed all in black, where you're just asked to ignore the fact that there are puppeteers on stage. That's my guess, based upon other things I've seen this company do. The neat thing is that as an audience, once you get to that point where you accept, okay, the puppet is the character, you naturally just don't pay attention to the puppeteers anymore, unless they incorporate them directly into a sight gag where you're supposed to notice them because that's part of the joke. But they're actually, if you're just going with the story, it's really not that hard to kind of phase them out. You occasionally might notice them again, but
I just wish Comcast had already sponsored us so we could all fly out and watch it. That's
yeah. Well, I'll let you guys know what I think when I see it, because it's funny because I thought my memory was that we didn't like Thankskilling very much, but I went back and listened to the episode, and we did 2 movies in that one episode, guys. We did Apollo 18, which was that terrible horror
movie, that nobody ever found.
And we did, yeah, exactly. It was a found footage movie that was left on the moon. Yep. So how did we find it? And then Thankskilling. And it was funny because we said Apollo 18 is a movie you absolutely should not watch, and Thankskilling is a movie you absolutely should watch. So, okay. So we did. I think what I was doing was I was mixing it up with Thankskilling 3, because there's no Thankskilling 2. Mm-hmm. There's only Thankskilling and Thankskilling 3, and Thankskilling 3 is partially. Thankskilling 3 is like an acid trip. It's just all over the place.
Well, because they're parodying the first movie through most of it, aren't they?
The whole joke is that the turkey is on a murderous spree because Thankskilling 2 is not going
was
to get
destroyed
released.
Or whatever. Yeah. They burned all the copies of it or something. Yeah. That's right.
And so he wants to go after the only remaining copy of Thankskilling 2 and will stop at nothing to do it. But there are all these other little side stories that don't factor into that at all, that the movie takes a lot of time to explore. So it's weird, but I'm sure the musical will be fun. This is the same theater that did Song of the Living Dead, which was an original zombie musical that they produced. And I got to, the first time it came around, I watched it and I loved it. And then when they did a remount, they reworked some of the show. They took some songs out, they put some new songs in. And I also volunteered to be a zombie extra for several of the performances, which was a lot of fun. So they've done some great horror comedy stuff live on stage in the past. So I'm looking forward to seeing this.
So wait, wasn't Thankskilling 57 minutes long or something ridiculously short? And is the musical adaptation going to be as long, if not longer?
I imagine it'll probably be a fairly short, one of their more short productions. They've done shows that lasted maybe an hour and a half with intermission, and sometimes they've done ones that are even shorter than that. Honestly, I think the most important thing is to not go beyond the length that the joke can support. You know, don't pull a Saturday Night Live and run a joke into the ground for 3 times longer than what it was necessary to get the joke across.
That reminds me, one of the insomnia movies I saw, It's Pat. Did not need to be a movie. I told you, I didn't have cable and I had insomnia, so I just watched whatever was on, and that was a movie that existed, and I had no idea it would continue that long.
I think I would fall asleep in self-defense with It's Pat.
Your brain would just start rejecting what it's seeing.
I think at the time I was hoping.
That's a character I never found funny, even in the short sketches.
No.
Now, for those people who don't know what It's Pat is an SNL movie that is based on this character who is androgynous. People can't tell if he's a guy or a girl, and the big gag is trying to see, who Pat wants to go out with. And the joke, see right there, it dies now. I'm only explaining. It's been 10 seconds, and that's the end of it.
Well,
it goes on.
It especially dies now that we've got a slightly more sophisticated opinion about gender and sexuality.
Yeah. And so at the time when this thing comes out, or when I'm watching it in high school, I'm hoping it gets better at some point. Like, okay, maybe the really good stuff's cut out because it's on TV, or maybe I'm just not understanding the jokes, or maybe, and I'm trying to make every excuse in the book.
Yeah, you gave that movie way more credit. Yeah.
Oh God, it was. I mean, it's horrible. So it's not a horror movie, but it's horrible. But don't watch It's Pat.
Didn't they also do a movie version of the character Al Franken did? The one that, gosh darn it, People Like Me. That one.
Stuart Smiley saves his family.
Saves his family. Yeah.
What?
So they did.
Never saw that.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Saturday Night Live inspired movies, I think there are maybe 3 fairly entertaining. One brilliant movie, which was Blues Brothers.
Okay.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Blues Brothers that's a fantastic movie from start to finish, and it's a long movie too.
Wayne's World.
Wayne's World is pretty good. Wayne's World 2 is also okay. It's pretty good.
Ladies Man was okay.
I didn't like Ladies Man. That was one of those that was based off a joke that was so limited that I felt that it had run out within half an hour.
Yeah.
But I would argue that I think the Coneheads is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's an entertaining film.
I remember it being okay, but that was the thing. I can't remember if it was good though.
No, I think I would argue okay. I don't think I would go so far as to say good. And I can't think of any other Saturday Night Live inspired movies. They also did Superstar.
Who's the MacGyver one?
Oh, MacGruber or something.
MacGruber, that one came out. I haven't seen that. I think it's Bill Hader.
I haven't seen.
He does Last Man on Earth. Last Man on Earth is, I think,
Last Man on Earth is good.
Awesome.
I like it.
That's on Fox right now. And so, I tweeted this out a long time ago. In my head, I want to believe that The Walking Dead and The Last Man on Earth take place in the same United States. So there's just there are people aimlessly trying to find each other in one part of the United States, and then the rest of it, they're dealing with this shit, which is just monsters everywhere. Well, not monsters, but zombies or the walkers. There's a Night at the Roxbury.
If in the show they ever go to Atlanta, it'll actually be hilarious if there's a random crossover.
They've avoided it so far. I would love to see Rick Grimes show up with no explanation, and they call him they can call him Rick, or they can call him
Richard. They
Grimy,
can call him Richard.
Or he could just go by Shane, just to mess with people. And we're like, wait, what? Huh?
I think Richard would work. You just call him Richard instead of Rick.
That would be so much fun. But yeah, so Superstar was another movie. Night at the Roxbury was another one. Those both sucked. What other SNL ones? They didn't make a Gumby movie, which is strange. They should have done that.
They've done a lot of Gumby shorts though. So
so they're
Lorne Michaels.
I
don't know if there are any other ones. Lorne Michaels did have a hand in some other sketch comedy movie things, like the Kids in the Hall movie, which
Brain
was
Candy.
Brain Candy.
I love that movie.
Brain Candy's good. It's weird. There are a couple of characters that they created in their sketch comedy series that do make an appearance, but it's largely new characters they created for the specific purpose of the movie.
Yeah.
I saw that one in the theater a couple times actually. So that's a weird one, but yeah, it's funny how he went off from horror movies over into SNL and comedy.
Thankskilling is the perfect pivot point, right? It's horror.
Yeah. That's true. Okay.
It's horror and it's hilarious, and so
well, it's a horror comedy. It was specifically made to be a horror comedy.
We got to Dale and Tucker versus Evil. We somehow went back to 7. I have a list of the movies for the notes on today's episode. Before we wrap up and look to the future, if there's one movie that you're going to suggest people watch for Halloween, what is it?
Halloween.
Eric?
Tucker and Dale. Yeah, sure.
I'm going to go with A Nightmare on Elm Street. I know it's not a Halloween movie, but it's
a good choice.
A great one because it still terrifies me to this day.
It's
at least
the best
in concept.
One of that series too.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to see a shit one, watch the second one.
Yeah.
The second one. Oh God.
Really, the fourth one isn't the fourth one the Dream Warrior and the fifth one Dream Child? Am I remembering that correctly?
I thought 3 was the Dream Warrior, 4 was the Dream Child, and 5 is Freddy's Dead.
You might
and
be
then
right. Yeah.
6 is 6 is not a New Nightmare.
Yeah,
you might be right on the numbering. 7, I think, is a New Nightmare.
Really? Did they make? I didn't know they had made that many because I thought that Freddy versus Jason would have been the 7th one.
Well, it's a good thing we don't have the internet to check, so we'll leave everybody alone with that. Next time. Oh, sorry. Anything, Jonathan?
No.
Okay. Next time on Podcast Without Pretense.
Guys, I was wrong. There are currently 73 movies in the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
I found Thankskilling, but not the Thankskilling we're looking for. I found it in a Bollywood version. It's epic.
I mean, I wouldn't say the hashtag backfired. We got a lot of exposure for it, but we should probably stop using it real fast.